All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA, and thanks for checking out the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? I'm going to hit on a weird subject today. It's regarding attention. This is mainly geared towards men, this one. But women can obviously listen to this and think I'm nuts as well. But the one thing I realize more than ever, especially being in the entertainment business or when I was making films, is how much people long for attention but don't want to admit it, which kind of blows me away. And I think I was one of those people too that always pretended like I didn't want attention drawn to me, but at the same time, I was seeking attention. I was kind of full of shit on that one, and I think a lot of men, and women too, are looking for a lot of attention. They just can't admit it to themselves or admit it to anyone else. And that goes for insecurities as well. I think a lot of us are very insecure regarding a lot of things, or we don't know what we're doing, we don't know what we're talking about, but we try to pretend. One is we're not that insecure when we are, and we also pretend we know what we're talking about a lot of things, and the truth is we don't, because a lot of information we're getting is full of shit. So, that's the thing I want to get into today. And on the flip side of that, I know there's a lot of guys out there that want attention, but block themselves from doing things to get attention, if that makes sense. So a lot of them, how do I say this? So a lot of guys want to change the way they dress or change their identity or their appearance, but they're afraid society or people, family members, friends, colleagues are going to start looking at them differently. Like they're going to almost make fun of them, or kind of have the attitude is like, who the hell do you think you are now? Why are you dressing differently? What are you looking for attention? You know all the type of things people are going to say in here. I'm here to tell you, who gives a shit what anybody else says? Really. If you really break it down, I think for the most part, a lot of us want attention from certain types of people. And that could be, for instance, in my Mastering Self-Confidence program, I talk about this because it's trying to help men find the women or woman of their dreams. And a lot of men are, for instance, drawn to all different types of women because of the way they act, the way they look, all these different types of things, right? And a lot of men, I think, get caught where they kind of want to, again, change their identity, but at the same time, they're afraid, again, of what women will think of them if they change, but they're really not getting any really good feedback regarding the way they are now. And I goof around, too, regarding this with insecurities, and that bogs down to, I think you're just basically insecure. And there's a lot of different types of insecurities, obviously. One I have, actually, which I goof around now more than ever when people ask me working out wise, they're like, oh my God, you're this age, you're still working out, Rich? And I goof around and say, yeah, I'm still insecure. Meaning, I love taking care of myself, working out and all those type of things. But I think what drove me to keep working out was I was insecure I'd be getting too small or I would lose my identity. I also don't want to change my wardrobe. But at the same time, I'm working out to get attention. No matter what I'm saying, it's not just for health reasons. I had to kind of accept that and say, yeah, I used to do it for strength and power, again, because I was insecure someone would be stronger than me or if I would lose a fight, all these different types of things. If I mentally, or if I was bigger and stronger than other people, I already mentally, I thought, had an edge on them. Regardless if you were small or big, you could get in a fight and get your ass kicked. That's not what I'm saying, but in my mind, I like being bigger, kind of more of an intimidating type figure. Because again, insecurities. But again, like I said, I did a lot of this because it drew a lot of attention to me. And I talk about that in my program. I've talked about that in my podcast. Is you really need to start being honest with yourself. You probably heard it a million times, but I really think people really aren't that honest with themselves. So especially if you plan on being an artist, a lot of times I'll just use I don't care if you're a musician, you want to be an actor, you want to be, if you want to draw paintings, I don't care what you want to be. A lot of times we're doing that because we want attention and we want to express ourselves. But for the most part, a lot of us want to express ourselves to a lot of other people, not just kind of friends, colleagues, or ourselves. Because if you wanted to do that, if say you want to make movies, you can make home movies all day of just yourself or whatever, a small group, and you don't have to have anybody see it. But for the most part, I think a lot of artists are looking to display their arts to a large audience, and they want to get feedback. They want to inspire people. They want people to critique them. They want to collaborate. They want all these different types of things, which again is, as much as it may sound kind of weird, it's attention. We want to bring attention to our views, our opinions, and what we're expressing, which is a good thing. And I think the quicker people realize that and are more open about that, to say, you know what, I do want to make a movie, but I do want, I do want to go after a film festival route, hypothetically, and then I do want to get a distribution deal. Where I hear a lot of independent filmmakers, when I was making films a lot of times, they're like, no, I'm just making a movie. I don't give a shit if anybody even sees it. I want to do this and that. And I don't even care who likes it, or I don't care who sees it. You're kind of full of shit. You're lying to yourself. Because for the most part, I'm not saying everybody's lying, but for the most part, you're making, films to really draw attention, I believe, again, to yourself. So, and again, when I say that, I don't mean me. You have a story that either you wrote or somebody else may have a story that you liked to make a film about. I'm just using it, or even music. And a lot of musicians, it's kind of interesting how a lot that I know are always kind of caught between being, I can't say they're shy, they're either almost extremely extroverted, or a lot of them are very introverted, but something when they get on stage kind of turns them into something different. And I think they like that. And they like the attention. Now, again, if you want to be a musician that just sits at a studio by themselves, makes music independently or privately and shoots it out, or just keeps it amongst themselves, kind of like Prince made a lot of music that he never let anyone listen to, right? And then he made music that literally, I'd say, billions of people probably listen to. So, the quicker I believe that you discover who you are and what you really want as far as this premise goes, I think the better off you're going to be, especially from a social media presence, and being consistent with that. Because I know tons of people, especially artists, that are either they overload, where they put too much shit online, I think, where there's nothing really that interesting about them after a while. And that doesn't mean you can't put a video yourself every day, or like I'm doing a podcast, or I'm doing YouTube videos as well. But you also want to put yourself in a position where people want to see more of you and not where they're exhausted from you. So now I'm going to go to the other level where you have people that know they want attention, but that are obsessed with it. And again, you could do whatever you want to do. I just wouldn't recommend it. Now, if you're making millions of dollars, you could really do whatever you want. But I'm not saying less is more in this case, because obviously there's people out there that are constantly flooding the market with whatever they're marketing and their own personal brand, and they're very successful. That works unbelievably. For me, I just have to have a balance. Yeah, and I think a lot of people almost get, when it comes to social media, their presence as far as, what would I say, longing for attention or showing people what they do. I think there's a balance there to say, hey, are you looking like an asshole online? Are you doing things to get attention in a negative way? Are you posting videos of you being smashed or acting like a fool, or just constantly putting political things up there to piss people off, which I find kind of quite funny. And it's interesting because I know a lot of people that are like, I don't want any attention at all, but they're always posting things on Facebook political, because the reality is they're claiming they don't want any personal attention, right? But at the same time, they're trying to get a reaction out of other people by the things they're posting. So you really do want attention, right? You also want to see if they leave comments, or if they like it or they dislike it. So again, I'm going to call a lot of people out on, their bullshit regarding social media, because as much as people say they hate Facebook, tons of people, especially men, they're lying. They're on Facebook a ton. They also claim that they hate a lot of different things, when the truth is they love it. They may not even realize they love it, but they do. They wouldn't keep going back to it. You don't keep doing something over and over again, usually, unless you like it, right? I mean, I understand you have a job, maybe, or certain things you have to do. But a lot of times, if you took Facebook, I'm just using for an example, a lot of people like it a lot more than they claim. It reminds me of McDonald's. I always talk about. Everybody talks shit about McDonald's, but for some reason, people are always kind of not going to McDonald's constantly, but they usually are bopping in and out of McDonald's every month or every other month for their fries. It could be a burger, it could be ice cream, whatever the case may be. I don't care if it's a coffee, cheap, if you don't want to spend some money, but you go there and you do enjoy it. And you've probably been doing it for many, many years. But when it comes up, the subject, you're kind of against it. Why? I have no idea why people do that. Again, as far as I think, that's kind of an insecurity. I think people sometimes have to realize that we get you want to have a certain identity, right? Because a lot of shit you're talking really probably isn't who you are. And I think for the most part, a lot of people know that about other people. But if you just sit back and said, you know what, from here on out, I'm actually going to be kind of more honest about every approach I'm taking. So if Facebook hypothetically comes up, I'll be like, yeah, I'm all right with Facebook because I actually get to see all my family members and their children, and I keep in contact with everyone this way, and I get to see what's going on. It's actually kind of an amazing tool. And that's how I kind of say, and I think that's the truth. I think a lot of people wouldn't think to say that, I guess, is what I'm saying. But that's really kind of the truth. It's not just about, I get people are constantly putting up things that are maybe pissing you off, but there's a lot of good to that as well. And back to McDonald's or back to any other thing. If you really sat back and said, really, what am I saying? Is it really truthful about my beliefs? I think a lot of times we're just spewing things because we want that person that we're with or talking to believe us to be different, right? Or believe us to be something that we're really not deep down inside again. And I think we kind of want to shield ourselves all the time because we're, again, afraid of what people are going to think about us, right? Or say about us, which is ridiculous. So let's jump on insecurities real quick. I kind of told you about a couple of my insecurities. And in my program, I really get into fear because most of the things that people, I think, what they go through is they're afraid of tons of different things. They don't want to realize that they're afraid of them. That goes for taking chances. It could be career, it could be relationships. They just have a lot of fears and insecurities, and I'm not saying you have to go after all of them and conquer them. And I just did a webinar on my program regarding this, and I think a lot of times people think if they have a fear, they have to hit it head on, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Because a lot of times, like I use for an example, I'm afraid of heights, hypothetically, and people are like, you got to conquer that. What's interesting is I fly all over the country, so I'm always in airplanes, which I've learned to master that because I'm in a plane. Now, I realized when I was younger that if somebody couldn't drive me somewhere, I had to fly somewhere, right? And there was no way I was going to be able to, when you're, do certain things unless I'm flying. I had to conquer that fear, but I did it differently than most people did it. It doesn't mean all of a sudden I'm afraid of heights and I got to go jump out of an airplane, and then once I jump out of an airplane, I'm good, or go do extreme sports or rock climb or whatever all this. I'm not interested in any of that. What I had to do was figure out how am I going to conquer my fear of heights within an airplane. So that's what I went and did. How I started off doing that is I couldn't even look out the window because I would have a heart attack. And then eventually, as time went on, I learned to keep myself busy, and I mentally took myself and put myself somewhere else. So I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared about a plane going down. I was just scared I was so high. I also was in fear that the pilot, I have no idea who the hell this guy is, or one or two of them. I'm putting my life in their hands. I don't like being in that position. Even when I was younger, I didn't like that. But again, I had to learn to conquer that fear, which I did do. Still, if I'm up in the air, I try to get the lowest hotel still. And I actually lived in a high-rise in Chicago, almost 70 floors. And I did it, I kind of wanted to always live in a high-rise. And after I lived there for a while, my heart just kept dropping. It was amazing views. You see airplanes passing you. It was great, but I realized I don't ever want to do that again. I also realized when I'm in so many hotels, I like to be on a lower floor because if something ever does happen, I want to jump. I'm not kidding. You don't think that's ever going to happen. Some friends of mine that I know actually know someone. They just went through this in Chicago. There was a fire. They had to jump out of their building. I think they were on the 5th floor. They broke both their ankles, part of their spine. And again, if something goes down, I want to be in a little more control of my environment. If I got to go down a flight of stairs, a few, 4 or 5, no big deal. If I'm 20 stories up, something goes down, there's a fire, I can't get down. I'm kind of putting my hands into the fire department to get me. If not, I got to jump or I die. So these are fears I'm just using for an example that I have. But I admit them to myself and I work around them. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to address is don't let your fears paralyze you entirely, and don't think you have to, go always head on with fears or insecurities, because there's a lot of ways to work around them, all right? And you just got to be kind of creative. I guess is what I'm trying to say regarding that. So definitely think about that. And the bottom line with what I'm trying to say in this podcast is internally really figure out who you are. Figure out if you are, for instance, afraid of something, work it to your advantage. And I know that may sound absolutely nuts, but what I did, back to the airplanes, is I'd go on an airplane, and like I told you, I mentally removed myself from the situation. So I started first writing screenplays while I was on a plane. When I was really young, I would bring magazines, but I'd run out of, you run out of magazines, I had to bring a bunch. But as I got older, even in my early 20s, I started writing, screenplays, short films, eventually real screenplays, and then eventually I was doing a lot of things regarding my films, and then I went on to write a couple books. I wrote a program. I created an app. What I did on the airplane was I didn't always just watch TV. It was like time to work. And I would be so focused in my work, then I was using my disadvantage, which was being afraid of heights, and then I used it to my advantage, if that makes sense. So if you can kind of master certain things to a certain degree, that you may be put in a certain position a lot of times in your life where it's a disadvantage because you're afraid. But you can flip it where you can actually, like I was kind of telling you, make it work to your advantage. And it takes time to learn how to do that, depending on what your fears are. But that doesn't mean, like I said, if you're afraid of swimming, that doesn't mean jumping into the, deep water and treading for your life. Where, you've seen people who try to teach people how to swim. And the old days, they would just throw you in water and say, hey, doggy paddle, do this, do this, do this. Get over your fear, learn how to swim. If you kind of just take your time and progress into something and figure it out, like, hey, I'm afraid of swimming. Obviously I'm going to start off at the shallow, or let me go get lessons. Let me figure out why I'm afraid of this. Okay. And then before you know it, because a lot of people I know like water, but they're afraid of swimming, believe it or not, or they're afraid they're going to drown, or all these different types of things. Again, just be aware. You just need to protect yourself, is what I'm basically saying. And not, what would I say, freak yourself out. So, and the reason I kind of did both of these, which was kind of longing for attention and then being insecure or having certain fears, is because I think they kind of go hand in hand. I think a lot of us, again, are insecure, and we're almost insecure with ourselves to really act the way we want to act, talk about what we want to talk about, and be authentic as possible. And if you're longing for attention, or if you want to conquer certain things, figure out the way that works best for you. I personally think people are always caught up in listening to what everybody else is saying. And I know I have a podcast here. I'm trying to tell you these type of things. But I always tell people, you need to figure out how to do whatever you want to do yourself. Because none of us are the same. So, and none of us, certain people have certain fears. Okay, heights, yeah, that could cross over to a lot of people. But what type of heights am I afraid of, right? There's all different levels of things. And same with insecurities. We all have different insecurities. There's millions of them out there. We all have different types of fears regarding many things. But we have to really, I believe, confront those things and say, why am I behaving the way I'm behaving? Or why do I keep saying certain things that I actually don't believe in? And why is it that I want attention from women or from the workplace, from my boss or whatever? Why don't I admit that to myself? And then why don't I put myself out there to see how it goes? Because I really think a lot of us, I can speak for myself, I'm kind of introverted and I'm very extroverted. I'm kind of both, just because I think of the way the environment I grew up in, which one was very religious and one was in a nightclub. But I really talk about kind of not being in the middle. I'm very extreme on both ends. And I had to learn to kind of come into the middle, because I would either I shut down for long periods of time because I get so obsessed with what I'm working on or trying to create that I don't even know the world exists for months and months at a time. And then you can throw me into another environment where I kind of think I'm the life of the party and everything's a joke, and I'm, then I go into that realm. It's almost like a performance. I just kind of had to learn how to be in the middle, and I think I had the fear of, when I was around certain people, I call it the Richie show. I knew I had to make them laugh and entertain them, right? And then I would get around other people that are very quiet, and then I would shut down because I was almost insecure to say, hey, I can't talk because these people are quiet. I want to be like them. I want to be quiet. And like, I think growing up in an Italian massive family, them being very loud, I had to figure out a way to either I was explosive screaming with them, or then I would just sit there and say nothing for the whole night because everybody else would take over. And I kind of like, now I had to figure out how to be comfortable within even my own family to say, hey, Rich, you don't have to be extremely quiet, and you don't have to be a big mouth. You could just be yourself, right? And I think a lot of people just need to figure that out regarding their home life and their work life and just their social life. But be honest about it, right? That's all I'm really saying. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. This one was a little wacky. As usual, I kind of go off all over the place, but I think you get the point a lot of times what I'm saying. And yeah, if you long for attention, you know what? You long for attention, right? Think about it. Just you want attention. And it could be anything. I don't care if you want a sports car and you're like, if I get a nice sports car, then everyone's going to look at me. But I kind of want to get a sports car because I love that car and I'll feel good in that car. Well, then go get the frickin' car, man. You know what I mean? Don't worry about it. And some things you're going to do in your life is going to draw attention, regardless if you want to admit it or not. But I would also say, if you don't want attention, stop putting yourself in these positions where you know you're going to draw a lot of attention, right? If you do certain things, that could be on social media, or just you could be somewhere and say something really obnoxious, or you could just be working on something that people want to gravitate towards and want to help you and all these different things. Just know that that's going to happen. Don't play it out stupid. Don't pretend like, you're going to do this and nobody's going to pay attention to you. That's kind of ridiculous. So, all right. What do we got here? So if you get a chance, you can check out my YouTube channel. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and I think I mentioned my Mastering Self-Confidence program. If you want any help regarding that, check that program out. We just did a 2-hour webinar. I think it's really good. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Take care, and if you're traveling, safe travels.